Hey everyone, welcome back to our YouTube channel. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay updated with our latest content. Hi, I'm Saos, an IT specialist and a proud member of the web development team. Today, we're diving headfirst into the world of ethical hacking and specifically how even your most secure accounts can be vulnerable. You've probably heard of two-factor authentication or 2FA. It's supposed to be this impenetrable wall, this extra layer of security that keeps the hacker out. You know, you get the text message, you punch in the code, boom, you're good to go, right? Well, not so fast. Turns out there are ways around even the most robust 2FA setups. We're going to be taking a look at the top 6 techniques hackers use to crack 2FA. And don't worry, this isn't about giving anyone any ideas. It's about understanding the vulnerabilities so we can better protect ourselves. Knowledge is power, people. By understanding how these attacks work, you can make more informed decisions about your own security and make sure your data stays yours. So, buckle up, smash that like button for the algorithm, and let's get right into it. 2FA is a method of authentication that brings an extra dish of security with it to the proverbial information security potluck. Instead of relying solely on the traditional combination of a username and password, 2FA schemes require that users authenticate with the following. 1. Something you know, password, PIN, etc. 2. Something you have, smart card, USB token, etc. 3. Something you are, voice, iris, fingerprints, etc. There are 2 ways to authenticate. One way. This is the most common type of authentication. This is a server-only / client-only method, with server-only authentication being the most used 2-way mutual authentication. Both client and server must authenticate with this method. It is not as common as one-way authentication, but is more secure. If a user set 2FA, a user has to enter verification code when a user tries to reset password. Under the password reset page, a user can enter wrong 2-factor authentication code many times. I said many times because your bug bounty policy stated exclusions issues found through automated testing, so I may not be allowed to brute force in order to check how many times a user can enter wrong 2FA codes. I didn't use any automated tools and didn't brute force for my testing. I tested that I could still reset my password after I entered wrong 2FA codes 20 times manually. It seems that a user can brute force 2FA codes. Step to reproduce. A user sends a password reset message to user's registered email. Go to password reset page from #1's message. Set a new password and brute force 2-factor auth code. After a user reset password, a user will go to Slack's homepage. From that page, a user can do anything. 2-factor authentication is another layer of protection. Even if a user leaked email address and password, a user will be protected by additional security, 2FA. If an attacker hacked victim's email, an attacker will be able to take over Slack's 2FA-enabled account by brute forcing 2FA code on password reset page. Recommendation: if a user entered wrong 2FA codes many times, a user will be blocked temporarily. 2-factor authentication, 2FA, is a robust security measure, but even it isn't immune to exploitation. Hackers have devised various techniques to bypass it, compromising accounts even with 2FA enabled. Without a doubt, the top technique to attack 2FA is social engineering. 2FA relies heavily on knowledge that is only known by the user, and when a website or service that uses 2FA is seemingly not working, users naturally reach out to tech support. Attackers have been observed social engineering tech support in order to get the user to reset their password or steal sensitive information related to 2FA. This is a natural point of vulnerability for 2FA, as any tech support interaction will make the odds of sensitive user information disclosure near inevitable, and by asking just a few questions, or none at all if the user volunteers this information. Cookie session hijacking has been with us since the dawn of networked computers. It has been said that there are hundreds of ways to perform cookie session hijacking, even if 2FA is used for authentication. A recently publicized method for performing this technique was demonstrated by hacking expert Kevin Mitnick using a man-in-the-middle attack framework called Evil Ginks. This involved tricking a victim into visiting a typo-squatted domain and presenting the user with a proxy login page. The user interaction allowed Evil Ginks to capture the user's login credentials and authentication code, which is then passed to the legitimate site. The end result was a captured session cookie, which can be used indefinitely. Depending on how your organization has implemented 2FA, code or number generators may be used for generation of something you know. See Google Authenticator. Random number generators normally start with a seed value generated at random, which is in turn used to generate the first number in the code. This first value is used by the algorithm to generate the subsequent code values. If attackers learn the algorithm and the seed number, they can use this information to create a duplicate code generator that is identical to the compromised user's code generator. Some websites and services that allow users to use 2FA may not require it, which means that the user does not have true 2FA. Rather, access to 1FA will still be available to both the user and attackers, meaning that attackers can use 1FA to access the site or service. The disturbing thing about this is that many widely used websites, including Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter, do not require 2FA even though they offer it. In instances like these, attackers can bypass 2FA by providing answers to password reset answers that are much less secure. What would authentication attacks be without the quintessential brute force attacks? Even though 2FA offers better security than 1FA, brute force can help attackers get around it. Brute force attacks are possible if the 2FA authentication screen does not enforce account lockouts for a predetermined number of bad attempts. How this works is that the attacker sends a password reset message to the compromised user's email. The attacker can then navigate to this password reset email and set a new password, and then simply brute force the user's 2FA code. Bugs are still a fact of life in today's world, and this extends into the world of 2FA. Within the last year or so, there have been several examples of this affecting widely used websites and services, including Uber. The dangerous thing about Buggy 2FA is the sheer volume of machines it can impact. For example, in 2017, the return of Coppersmith's attack vulnerability, Rocker, was discovered to impact all 2FA products, including smart cards and TPM chips that use Infineon Technologies generated RSA keys of 2048 key lengths or less, which most are. To this day, there are hundreds of millions of impacted devices. Next up, we've got man-in-the-middle attacks. Now, this one's a bit more technical, but stick with me here. Imagine you're sending a letter to your friend. You drop it in the mailbox, feeling good about it, but what you don't know is that someone's tampered with the mailbox and is intercepting your letter before it reaches your friend. They read it, maybe even change the contents, and then they put it back in the mailbox as if nothing happened. That's kind of how a man-in-the-middle attack works. You see, when you're connecting to a website, especially if you're on public Wi-Fi, there's a chance that a hacker is sitting between you and that website, intercepting all the data that's being transmitted. So when you enter your 2FA code, guess what? They're going to grab that too. It's like they're reading your mail, but in this case, they're after your digital valuables. Now, there are ways to protect yourself from these attacks. Using a VPN or virtual private network is like sending your letter in a super secure, encrypted envelope. It makes it much harder for anyone to intercept and read your data, including those pesky 2FA codes. So, if you're going to be doing any online banking or shopping on a public Wi-Fi network, make sure you're using a VPN. Trust me, it's worth it for the peace of mind. All right, moving on to something a little more, shall we say, invasive. SIM swapping. This one's just plain nasty. Basically, with SIM swapping, a hacker manages to convince your mobile carrier to switch your phone number to a SIM card that they control. Think about it. Most of the time, your phone number is linked to your bank accounts, your social media, pretty much everything important in your digital life. And if a hacker gets a hold of that, well, it's game over. They can intercept your calls, your text messages, and yes, even your 2FA codes that are sent via SMS. It's like they've cloned your phone and everything on it. So how do you protect yourself from this nightmare scenario? First off, be very wary of any calls or messages you get from people claiming to be from your mobile carrier, especially if they ask for any personal information. Secondly, consider using an authentication app instead of SMS for your 2FA. These apps generate codes offline, which means they're much harder to intercept. They're like a vault for your 2FA codes, keeping them safe and sound. And finally, if you can, set up a PIN code with your mobile carrier. That way, even if someone tries to do a SIM swap, they'll need that PIN to make any changes to your account. Okay, let's talk about backup codes. You know, those things they tell you to write down and keep in a safe place, just in case you lose access to your authentication app? Well, they can be a bit of a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they're great to have if you get locked out of your account, but on the other hand, if they fall into the wrong hands, they can be used to bypass your two-factor authentication entirely. And that's where brute forcing comes in. Brute forcing is essentially a guessing game, but instead of a human trying to guess your password or backup code, it's a computer program that can try thousands, even millions of combinations per second. Now, most websites and apps have measures in place to prevent brute forcing, like limiting the number of login attempts. But some, especially older ones, might not be so well protected. So what can you do? Well, first and foremost, don't use those backup codes unless you absolutely have to. Keep them somewhere safe, like a password manager, not on a sticky note attached to your monitor. And if you do have to use a backup code, change it as soon as you regain access to your account. It's like changing the locks after you've had a break-in. Now, this next one is a bit more on the technical side, but it's important to understand that sometimes the problem isn't with you or your behavior, but with the two-factor authentication system itself. You see, no system is perfect, and there are always going to be vulnerabilities that hackers can try to exploit. These vulnerabilities could be anything from a coding error in the authentication app to a weakness in the way the website or service has implemented two-factor authentication. And if a hacker finds one of these vulnerabilities, they can potentially bypass your two-factor authentication altogether without even needing your password or any codes. It's like finding a secret backdoor into your house that bypasses all the locks and security systems. Now, the good news is that these vulnerabilities are usually patched pretty quickly once they're discovered, but the bad news is that new ones are being found all the time. So what can you do? Well, the best thing you can do is to stay informed, keep your software up to date, pay attention to security news and advisories, and be aware of the websites and services you're using and how they handle two-factor authentication. All right, last but not least, we've got social engineering. This one's all about manipulation and deception. You see, hackers know that humans are often the weakest link in any security system, so instead of trying to hack into your accounts directly, they might try to trick you into giving them the keys to the kingdom. They might call you pretending to be from tech support, claiming that there's a problem with your account and that they need your two-factor authentication code to fix it. Or they might send you a message on social media, pretending to be someone you know, asking for your two-factor authentication code because they're having trouble logging in. The possibilities are endless, and these hackers can be incredibly convincing. So how do you protect yourself? Well, the best defense against social engineering is a healthy dose of skepticism. Never give out your two-factor authentication code to anyone, no matter who they claim to be or how urgent the situation seems. If you're ever in doubt, hang up the phone, close your laptop, and contact the company or person directly through their official channels to verify their identity. Remember, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. So there you have it, folks. Those are just a few of the ways that hackers can try to bypass your two-factor authentication. It might seem like a scary world out there, but remember, knowledge is power. By understanding these techniques, you can be more aware of the risks and take steps to protect yourself. Use strong, unique passwords. Be wary of phishing attempts. Consider using a password manager and a VPN. And most importantly, stay informed about the latest security threats. The internet is an amazing tool, but it's also important to be aware of the dangers and to take steps to stay safe. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, leave a comment down below with your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel for more cybersecurity tips and tricks. Until next time, stay safe out there.